WTF is Jarrah. Unlike the last bit I covered, which you can check out in one of the corners here, which was Tassie Oak, Jarrah is much less confusing. It only has one name, Jarrah, though historically it was called Swan River Mahogany. It's only made up of one tree, Eucalyptus margin. I'm going to call it Eucalyptus margarine, which is wrong, but I don't know the pronunciation. There is one exception, which isn't Jarrah, but we'll cover that a little bit later, which is Pacific Jarrah. All right, so what is Jarrah? Jarrah is a local wood. Now, I say local as in it is grown in Australia. It's only grown in Western Australia, which is not very local to me. It's about 3,500 kilometres away, which is a fair hike. However, it is sold pretty much all over Australia. It's probably one of the most iconic Australian woods, and definitely is the most iconic wood when thinking about Western Australia. So this is Jarrah. Also, this is Jarrah. As you can see, there's quite a range of colour to it. It's probably what you'd classify as a medium density wood in the grand scheme of things. It is definitely harder than Tassie Oak, but the real difficulty with Jarrah isn't actually its hardness, but its workability. It has a high amount of silica in the wood, which means it's very abrasive on edges. So realistically, that means that if you're working it by hand, you're going to be sharpening a lot. Probably the worst thing I've ever done on the lathe was making a Jarrah bowl, and that's because every 2 or 3 minutes I had to resharpen because the abrasive nature of the wood just meant I had to constantly sharpen. Definitely a wood that using carbide on isn't a bad idea. Now these aren't particularly fancy examples of Jarrah, but we can see the raw wood here, and then I've got one coat of blonde de-wax shellac on both these parts. So you can see that it ranges from quite an orange colour to a darkish red, and it actually goes further. There are dark browns as well as sort of purpley browns that you can find in there. So in terms of janker density, we're looking at somewhere between Purple Heart and Babinga. And combined with that colour, I don't see why any Australian would use Babinga, because to me, Jarrah is a really gorgeous native, and that's kind of nice. Now I mentioned Pacific Jarrah not actually being a Jarrah, and that's because it's not. A little bit like Tasmanian oak not actually being an oak, it's trading off the name of Jarrah. However, this doesn't have any sort of historical context. Pacific Jarrah is a relatively new thing. I think it's about the last decade or so, maybe 2. And it's very much trying to cash in on the Jarrah name, which in Australia at least has a lot of prestige about it. Pacific Jarrah, not a Jarrah, not even a eucalypt. It's not an Australian native. Some guy in Queensland decided to import it and call it that. A lot of the Forestry Western Australia Board type people are very angry about this, and I believe there were some lawsuits, or at least plans of that, and I'm not really well versed in how that all went. So that, or this more accurately, is what Jarrah is. So what is Jarrah used for? Pretty much everything, actually. The only thing Jarrah isn't really used for is tonal woods, so instrument making. It can be used on some small parts that don't affect the tone too much, but in general it's considered a fairly dull or flat sound musically. However, it's pretty much used for everything else. Interior joinery, exterior joinery, flooring, decking, less so these days, but it was used quite a lot in Western Australia for structural stuff, so building houses out of. Again, historically, it was exported to the UK, coated in tar and then stuck on the ground, and it acted as cobblestones. Such is the durability of Jarrah. It's considered a Class 2 timber, or Class 2 outdoor durability rating, whatever they want to call it, which means that you get, I think it's about 45 years expected life, above ground untreated, and in ground about 15 to 25 years, which isn't too bad. And that's why I used Jarrah on the frame of my outdoor table. Again, there'll be a clicker link somewhere, because it's nice, it's very durable, particularly outdoors. So with a little bit of maintenance, that table will pretty much outlast me. So other than being a very pretty and very durable wood, there are a few reasons why I like Jarrah. I'm quite fond of red coloured timbers. Jarrah would probably be my second most favourite, with red gum just slightly pipping it. Other than that, my family also has a bit of an emotional connection to it. My dad, who's no longer with us, used to make a lot of Jarrah furniture. He wasn't necessarily a woodworker, so some of the pieces are perhaps not as sound of construction, but he was a make anything, so very much the in thing, the maker thing, where he'd just have a go at pretty much everything. So those pieces are now family heirlooms because they've got that emotional attachment to us. I'll have links in the description below, or maybe one of the clicky links again, to a playlist of various Jarrah furniture from people like George Woodchop, who lives in WA, so has more easy access to such timbers, as well as whatever else I can find online. So now you should know a little bit more about Jarrah. Thanks for watching.